I mean, my biggest worry, considering how iconic the game is what if I play it and I don't actually like it that much? And then, can you imagine what the backlash of the reviews going to be like? Can you imagine what the backlash of the reviews going to be like?
Well, at least I didn't hate it.
The word iconic is bandied around nowadays at anything that anyone enjoys, but rarely is it so appropriate as it is for this review. So this game not only popularised the Final Fantasy series and JRPGs in the West in general, but also the argument it caused between Nintendo and Square, culminating in Square leaving and joining Sony's fledgling PlayStation, also has a unique place in history. Unhappy with Nintendo's decision to go with cartridges on the N64, Square partnered with Sony, playing a part in the success of the PlayStation and PlayStation 2, and potentially the PlayStation 5, following the announcement of Final Fantasy XVI as a PlayStation 5 exclusive. But in many ways that's why this video actually exists. I was a Nintendo 64 guy, hence I missed out on Final Fantasy VII. And I don't have the nostalgia that everybody has for it, which means that I can look at this in a very, very objective way. And that in itself is terrifying. So let's start with the graphics. Now, it would be utterly ridiculous to expect the graphics from 1997 were going to be amazing, even if the version I'm playing is slightly enhanced. Yes, the 3D character models look silly by 2020 standards, but I can totally understand how they were groundbreaking. What really sticks out to me though is the depth of scale that the game gives you. The environment feels incredibly large and well drawn for a game of its time. Some of the cutscenes are shockingly detailed as well, showing Square's determination to use the advantage of its CD-based system to its maximum. My mum likes to say no one and nothing is perfect, and there's one little bit of Final Fantasy graphics that I really can't stand, and I know I'm being pedantic, but that title screen is really awful. I mean, look at how goddamn ugly that is. It looks like someone set fire to a room that contained 19th century wallpaper, and after it got covered in soot, they then used a hand scanner from 1994 to create the image. And yes, I have thought about that too deeply. Up next, we've got the sound, and what can I say? It's Square Enix. These guys just know how to do music and sound effects, don't they? And not just in this series. Once again, it's absolutely top notch here, but interestingly, this is where I do get a little bit of nostalgia. Little things like a small bit of music or a menu sound echoes what was to come and reinforces this game as the foundation of a global franchise. The music and sound for its time is what you'd expect. Excellent. The next section is the one I have the biggest issue with, gameplay. And just to warn you up front, for those who haven't played the game, there's some major spoilers coming up next. Let's start with a few positives. I like the materia battle system where magic is attached to slots on your weapons and armour. Combat is simplistic, but it functions well and never feels like you're just bashing the attack button. Also, I'm 15 hours in and I'm yet to feel like I've had to unnecessarily grind for XP, which for a Final Fantasy game is a bit of a revelation. And now for some of the negatives. I can understand why the graphics and sound retrospectively would be good, but bad storytelling in 2020 is exactly the same as bad storytelling in 1997. And some of the storytelling in Final Fantasy VII is a little bit on the silly side. And I don't mean Cloud dressing up as a woman to infiltrate a strip club silly. I kind of enjoyed that, it felt very authentically Japanese. What I'm referring to is Cloud falling miles off a bridge and through the top of an old church, presumably to his death, only to have his fall broken by flowers. Yes, flowers. Clearly the rare pillow flower. Eventually, as the story moves on, we're reunited with Tifa, who watched her childhood friend fall off the bridge to his presumable death. Now, as the story goes on, we find out how intertwined Tifa and Cloud's story really is. So why is it that when she finally meets up with him after she thought he was dead, she reacts to it with all of the emotional intensity of somebody who's just found a biro down the back of the sofa? There are sections of the game that rely on timing with very little room for error. Whether it's pressing a button in time with Tifa and Barrett, or performing a march with the Shira army, these minigames suck and someone should have realised it. The worst example being the swinging beam. If there is a technique to doing it, I don't know what it is and I don't care, it's just annoying. And that in essence is my biggest problem. There are areas of this game where I feel like the designers are deliberately trying to annoy me. Just as an example, I understand that by taking this route into the building it involves climbing to the 60th floor, but do I really have to climb this many flights of stairs to get there? I mean, I got the point a while ago, guys.
And before anyone out there shouts about realism,
They didn't worry about realism when they were representing air duct design, did they?
I am starting to form a relationship with some of the characters.
This may surprise some people, but Barrett in particular. In many ways he's more heroic than Cloud, throwing himself in front of everybody to protect them. And whilst Cloud has become the face of the franchise and has starred in other games like Kingdom Hearts, and Tifa garnered fame years later when the Momo Challenge hoax became a thing, Barrett seems to be famous for little more than building houses. And yes, only British people will get that gag.
One thing you cannot fault Square for is their lack of ambition. They threw literally everything they possibly had at this game.
There's a section as you escape the Shinra facility that the game turns into a version of Road Rash. Later in the game it turns into a real-time strategy game. A basic one, sure, but it's literal innovation happening in front of your very eyes.
So I have another issue which I really need to get off my chest, but it won't affect the final score in any way. So I'm on top of the Shinra building, going face to face with Rufus, and Cloud is going to go one-on-one with Rufus. So the rest of the team all go off, and there's a question that comes up about whether I want to reorganise my materia. So I strip all the guys of their materia, thinking I can make sure I give Cloud all the best bits for his battle. Off they go into a lift. Cue them in the boss battle, where Barrett is the only person who can actually hit the boss character across from me. So there's two bosses that they face. But I survive it, I fight my way through all of that, I fight my way through Rufus and beat him. They all go down to the lobby. Barrett goes out the front door and he's shooting people, they're surrounded, what are they going to do? Tifa comes running down the stairs and the game freezes.
Look at this. That is bullshit.
But the irritations do not end there.
Catching chocobos is an annoying experience, and it took me a while to get one, but I finally did it. And you need it to avoid fighting this snake who will whoop your ass. So I go into the cave and I find another huge snake on a huge pole lying dead, so no wonder the other snake is angry. I go to the next section and end up in Mithril Mines. Thinking intelligently, I go back outside to the overworld map because you can save the game anywhere. So I go to do that, and the game crashes again.
13 years, Square Enix. 13 years you've had to get this game right, and it's still a broken mess. I'm assuming it wasn't broken when it was released, because you couldn't patch PlayStation games back in the day. So why is this version crashing? Why has it crashed on me twice? That is rubbish.
Moving on to Lifespan, like I said, I'm 15 hours in, and in terms of the original game, which was in 3 discs, I'm over midway through disc 1, so there's definitely a lot more story and challenge to come.
I have really enjoyed playing Final Fantasy VII, and I think if you've never played it before, I definitely would pick it up and give it a go. All I'm saying is it really the best Final Fantasy that was ever made? I just don't feel like it is. I don't even think, in terms of the ones I've played so far, that it's in some of their leagues, 6, 5, 10. I don't think it is. That said, I do kind of want to play it again. If it wasn't for the fact that I've got to move on to Final Fantasy VIII, I probably would keep playing it. It's given me that Final Fantasy buzz, and for that, it does deserve a pat on the back.
Excellent.